Thank you for joining us with the Princeton Review, Researching Colleges and Demonstrating Interest. My name is Julia Moody. I'll be your host for the evening, or your hostess. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Princeton Reviews, Researching Colleges and Demonstrating Interest. I'm Julia Moody, and I'll be your hostess for the evening, along with Emily Baubel, who will be moderating our talk this evening and gathering questions. Please feel free to send questions in, but she will be answering them at the end of the presentation. So there'll be no questions answered as we roll through the presentation, but we definitely save time at the end to make sure we get to any of your questions. So here we go. As I said, I'm Julia Moody. I've been a counselor with the Princeton Review for a number of years. I've also been a counselor in the private and public sector of high schools in Los Angeles primarily. Worked in admissions in MIT, and also work as a pro bono financial aid counselor for families that need my help. Educationally, my background, I went to Cornell as an undergrad in the very frigid upstate New York, which I loved but froze. I got my certificate in college counseling from UCLA when I was in Los Angeles, and then went back to school later in life and got my master's in higher education at Harvard, which was a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. And I love this job. Why counseling? People ask me all the time, why counseling? Why working with teenagers? I adore teenagers. I come by it honestly. I have two of my own who are now grown, but I've been through the teenage phase with my children, and I absolutely adore working with young people. So any help that I can give you all tonight, I am pleased to share my information, and here we go. So first of all, we're going to talk about college research, the different ways to research colleges, because there are many paths to research. Then we'll discuss demonstrating interest. We'll define what that means in this context and how you do it. And then we'll take questions, as I mentioned, at the end of the presentation. So college research, very, very important when a student has a college list or when you're trying to develop a college list, that research plays a huge role in this process. If you don't research your colleges, you're not going to be able to apply properly. So Princeton Review, coincidentally, has a fantastic college search engine. It's a Find Your College website. You can put in the states that you're looking in, majors you're looking for, tuition and fees, if that's something that you're going to look at as a defining factor, enrollment size, rankings, activities, all sorts of things. And they'll pull up all kinds of universities for you to look at, more than you need. But what you'll do is it'll help you to start creating a list and then further narrowing down your list as you go through more of these different categories along the left-hand side. So many students do a number of searches on our Find Your College website and just vary the search permutations and see sort of what comes up and develop a strong college list. So a very important part of your college research is website research. So another area that we really love is College Navigator. This is a site that's sponsored by the Department of Labor, and it's developed by the National Center for Education Statistics. Their college search tool includes tuition, school size, financial aid data, and much more detailed information about each college. It's a fantastic site. You can look by state, as you can see. You can click on their map and click all over the map. This is a fantastic site. So it's called College Navigator for those of you who are watching. And this will be broadcast again online, so you'll be able to come back and check it out. Another site that we really like for research is IPEDS. And the IPEDS Data Center provides detailed information on every college in the country. It allows users to compare colleges based on a single data point. So if you want to create sort of a school's performance history data point or create reports based on that, it allows you to do all of that. You can save your sessions, you can print, you can create data feedback reports. For the real intense researcher, IPEDS is an excellent, excellent resource, and we strongly recommend it for anyone who's really into deep research. It can take a lot of time, but it's well worth it. So IPEDS is another one that's sponsored by the federal government. ed.gov, another one. This is a college scorecard. And what the college scorecard does is shares data on all colleges' retention and graduation rates. So what is retention? Retention is the percentage of students who return for sophomore year of college after leaving from their freshman year. That's the definition of retention. So if 100 students leave freshman year and 99 come back sophomore year, a school will have a 99% retention rate, which is extremely high. Obviously, that's a very low number of students, but I'm giving you a sense. Graduation rates now, believe it or not, and many parents hang on to your hats, because graduation rates are stated in 4-year increments, 5-year increments, and 6-year increments. The norm that schools look at for graduation these days is frequently on a 6-year basis. And I know that when I went to college, if it took me 6 years to go to undergrad, my father would have been crazy and cut me off at the end of 4 years. So just know, when you're looking at this ed.gov, and another excellent research source, the college scorecard, know what you're looking for. And this is something you should look at for every school. It's also on the school's website, but much easier to find here. So we also provide and produce a book every year, The Best 386 Colleges. Rob Franek, who is fantastic, the editor-in-chief of the Princeton Review, he actually goes and visits colleges every year. He's constantly on the road. He's interviewing students. He's interviewing professors. He's checking out facilities. And this book is really wonderful, because not only does it give you all the data about colleges, but it also gives you a lot of anecdotal information. So you can read about what the students think about the cafeteria, the gym, how they interact with their professors. And so it gives you the nuts and bolts of the school, but it also gives you a lot of sort of soft information that's not hard data. And Rob does this by being out on the road and gathering this information. This book is produced every year, and it's usually in the 386, 385-ish school range. So you can imagine all the work that goes into this. An excellent, excellent resource for research. That's difficult to say. So key place to do college research, the school's website. Every college will have a website. You can dig into the website. You can see what their mission statement is, which is really key. That's going to tell you, a college's mission statement is going to tell you about their ethos, about why they exist, why they're there to educate students, what their key beliefs are. And you want to make sure that you are in sync with that mission, because if it's something that doesn't feel right to you, and it's usually a very concise, by definition, a very concise statement. If their mission statement doesn't really feel right with you, and the explanation that typically follows it doesn't sit well with you, well, then that's not going to be a college for you. But it's equally important to find the colleges that fit and that work for you, as important as it is to find the colleges to take off of your list. Because remember, many families start with lists of 20, 25 schools, and you need to really narrow it down. And one of the ways is through the process of elimination. So going through all of these different data resources will really help you trim that list down. And you can dig in here on a school's website. You can look for everything from clubs, classes, different organizations, what majors are offered. Anything you need to know about this school is going to be on their website. And again, the more time you spend on a website, the deeper you dig, the more you're going to find. So do not ever overlook a school's website in your college research process. So another great tool, colleges produce frequently, and you can find them online, oftentimes they'll produce school newspapers and school magazines, either for current students or for alumni. I get both Cornell and Harvard magazines every month or every 2 months. And they're awesome sources for my research, because they let me know what students are doing, what different research professors are doing so how active professors are in the university, what different publications have been put out by the school. There's typically at the back a bunch of different books that you can purchase that the school has published within that period. So they'll really give you the latest breaking news on what's happening at the school and with people who are affiliated with the school. Another great resource for alumni information. And as some of you learned from our last presentation, alumni can be a really great key to the success of a school because many of them are going to hire graduates. So if there's a strong alumni organization, it's going to be reflected in the magazine, either the alumni magazine or the school magazine. That's really a great positive point for a school. So don't overlook, or actually you should look for, these newspapers and magazines to see what's happening on campus. So once you have all of this research, what do you do with it? So you need to organize it. We suggest that you create a spreadsheet, ideally on Excel or Google Sheets or something in that vein. School name, location, include the type of application. For example, a school can be on the Common application. It can be on the Applied Texas application or the UC application. The Coalition is another form of an application. And you want to put all of this information, including the school website. You may want to track graduation and retention rates. Acceptance rates are key. Average GPA and test scores, pros and cons that you and your family come up with in this process. Application deadlines, really important. Are auditions or portfolios required? So once you have all of this in a spreadsheet format, you'll really be able to compare apples and apples. And that's what you're trying to do. Obviously, the colleges are not apples and apples, but if you're going to look at admission, acceptance rates, you want to be able to look down at one row and see, okay, what are the acceptance rates of all the schools I'm looking at? Is there a 4% acceptance rate at my dream school? Well, if so, I think I need to come up with some other dream schools as well, because 4% is very low. So keep it all together. And this is the way everything that I've mentioned prior to this page can be condensed and conglomerated onto this spreadsheet that you'll create. And many of you are spreadsheet whizzes and love these spreadsheets. So demonstrating interest, what is it? What is demonstrated interest? So colleges want to know that you're interested by your taking the time and energy to visit or reach out to the school. Of course, now in COVID, we're not visiting schools because most schools, 99% of schools, are closed for college tours, which is something you can look up online and see if they're conducting real tours at all or virtual tours. Many selective and small schools actually keep track of the interaction you have with the school, and I'll circle back to the virtual idea in a moment. So imagine each interaction you have with the school is like a tap on the shoulder. You're saying, hey, it's Julia, I'm here at your info session. Hey, it's Julia, I stayed for your tour. Hey, it's Julia, you're visiting my high school and I'm coming to your presentation. That is showing a school that you have demonstrated your interest in the school, that you're really tapping them on the shoulder and saying, I really like you, I'm really interested in you. And schools appreciate that. So they understand that you can't visit during the pandemic, that's a given. And large universities will rarely track students' interest. We're really talking about the smaller schools. So many schools now, rather than having the in-campus in-person tours and info sessions, they'll present them virtually, and you can find those online on the school's website. Some of you in high school have had colleges present directly to your high school virtually, maybe via Zoom through admissions, and that's another great way you can reach out to admissions after the presentation in any context, whether it's directly with your school or whether it's on a larger overall Zoom meeting or presentation. You can reach out and thank them. That's another great way to show demonstrated interest. So really, demonstrated interest is something that's critical to a number of schools You can even Google schools that place great importance on demonstrated interest, and the big list will come up. So something to think about. And again, with COVID, you have to be creative. You don't want to be overbearing, but you definitely want to show schools that you're interested in what they have to offer and in potentially attending their college or university. So why are college visits important? So in a time of pre-COVID, you could tour campus facilities in person. Now you can do them virtually. You can feel out the fit of the school. Does it feel like, just as I mentioned with the mission statement, did the mission statement feel like it was sort of in sync with your thoughts? Well, does the school feel like it's in sync with who you are? Does it feel like a great sweatshirt that you put on and you just sink into? Or is it more like a suit that you can't quite make it work and it doesn't feel comfortable? That's what fit is. And we went over fit in one of our last presentations. Also with a college visit, you get to know the college spirit and sort of the vibe on campus. Are kids having fun on the quad where there's grassy areas? Are they playing Frisbee? Is everyone studying in the library? Is it really intense? Is there no one out? Is everyone in the library? Maybe it's near finals. Maybe there's a reason everyone's in the library. You want to talk to students. You want to learn about the admissions process. And you can potentially, if you're in an in-person visit, hopefully post-COVID, you can take part in an informational or admissions interview. Many schools will offer those, and those are things you can request via the school website. And this is another way of demonstrating interest. So college visit, if it's in person, you can go on a tour and do all of these things. If it's virtual, you're still offered virtual tours, and you can still reach out and see if you can have a virtual interview with admissions or with admissions, sometimes with alumni. So something to look into with college visits. So COVID-19's impact on college visits. As I mentioned, many universities have canceled campus visits and in-person tours until further notice. They're giving their own visits and tours online, most of them. However, there are websites for updates, and we have them listed here. NACAC, which is the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, is our umbrella group that oversees all of college counselors and college admissions counselors. And you can get newsroom updates about what schools are open, what schools are having tours, what schools are having virtual tours. Look on schools' YouTube channels for websites and virtual tours and info sessions. There are also websites that specialize in virtual tours. uvisit.com is a great virtual tour site, and so is campustours.com. So because with COVID, the odds of your being able to get there are probably not going to be too strong right now. Definitely rely on whatever you can online, whatever online resources schools offer, take full advantage of. And maybe next summer you'll be able to check them out. We hope. So an information session. What is an information session? I mentioned it earlier. It's a formal presentation that's given by a school admissions representative. And it's typically about 45 minutes long. Plus they allow for 15 minutes of questions and answers. And it works frequently the same when they do it via Zoom. They give an overview of the schools, the value, their admissions requirements. Sometimes they'll list retention and completion data, things to do. You absolutely want to sign in, virtually or in person. You want to take notes because at some point you're going to be writing your why this school essay, if the school has that essay on its application. And you may be applying to this school and not know yet because you're still in the research process. But these notes will come in really handy when you're writing the college's supplemental essays. If you have the opportunity to ask one or two relevant questions, make sure they're not just questions that will interest you. You want them to be relevant, and you want them to not be questions that can be easily answered on the school's website. For example, you don't want to ask how many students attend your university. because that's easily found on a school's website. You want to introduce yourself to the presenter before or after the session, again, depending on how it's presented. And virtually, obviously, you're not going to shake anyone's hand, and now we're not shaking hands anyway, but you'd like to get the person's information, follow up with a brief thank you note. Again, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, thank you notes are worth their weight in gold. You can send them via email, or you can send them via snail mail. And trust me, not very many students use snail mail anymore, and admissions officers really appreciate getting those cards and letters. Things to avoid: don't show up late. If it's started and you're not in, don't go. Or slip in the back if you're there in person, very, very quietly. Parents should not monopolize the question and answer session. This happens a lot at info sessions that I attend. It's frequently parents asking questions and none of the students ask questions. Students, you need to speak up, and your parents need to sit back a little bit and let you run the show here. Don't chat with friends and family during the session. It's rude. Someone else is speaking and you don't want to interrupt them. Even if you're talking about the school, they're not going to know that. Turn your cell phone off. Again, whether it's in regular presentations or virtual presentations, cells should be off, because that ring is going to ring through the entire room or the entire Zoom presentation. Virtual information sessions. So as I said, due to COVID-19, many schools are offering live or recorded virtual information sessions. It's sometimes really convenient if they're recorded because you can watch them at any time. However, if they're live, you can ask questions in real time. You can submit questions sometimes in advance. If you go on the school's website and register for a live info session, sometimes they'll solicit questions right then and there for when you register. Other times they'll let you submit questions just after the presentation, and they'll answer your questions on Zoom. That's when you have them live. Again, register for them on the school's websites. Take notes just as if it was in person, and you may typically have access to a recording of the session. This is something you want to ask admissions, because it'd be great to be able to go back and take more notes or listen to that again if you have access to it. So sometimes you won't be able to actually ask admissions. You may need to send them an email, but that's a fantastic way to have an info session if you can't go to the school. So the campus tour, things to do on the campus tour. So this is if you're there in person. You want to talk to other kids or families in their group, see where they're from, see what other schools they're looking at. You don't want to make too much noise because your tour guide is giving the tour. So don't be too overly chatty, but it's good to get to know, who else is there looking at the school. You want to take notes if you can while you're walking, which most of you can do that on your cells, as long as the ringer is off. You want to take photos of key landmarks on the tour, because what this does is it helps you remember later what school's campus you were on. After a while, they kind of start to blend together. You want to let your tour guide know if you have to leave the tour. Say you're going to another school for a tour, you have to leave a little early. You definitely want to let them know, just out of politeness. Otherwise, they may stop the tour and be waiting for you, not knowing that you've actually left. And then at the end, get your tour guide's contact information, and you can write your tour guide an email with additional questions. You may want to talk to them more about their major. You may want to talk to them more about the school, or you may just want to say thank you, which again is a real nice thing. Sometimes schools will poll the tour guides after the tours and see what the tour guides thought of the kids. So remember, just as you're evaluating the school and the tour guides and the admissions presentation, frequently they're evaluating you too. So it goes both ways. Things to avoid. Not all tour guides are created equal. Some schools have students audition for tour guides, to be tour guides, and it's a huge honor. University of Virginia, it takes students years, literally, even though they're only there for 4. Some of them will start as sophomores and practice and work into becoming a tour guide. It's considered a huge honor to be a tour guide at University of Virginia. Some may not be so great. I've had some kids turned off by schools because they haven't had a great tour guide. Try and look beyond that. And remember, tour guides are people. Maybe they're having a bad day, and it's just they're not on that day. Or maybe the school just didn't choose the right person. So try and look beyond a poor tour guide, which unfortunately can happen. Don't allow bad weather to overshadow your opinion of a college. I can tell you, if you're touring schools in the winter and you get dumped on with snow, it may actually be a good thing, because that's what's going to happen when you're there in the winter if you're attending. Had I known how much snow there was at Cornell, I'm from Hawaii and I went to Cornell from Honolulu. That was a huge shock to the system. I knew there was snow, but I had no idea how much snow there was and how long it snowed. In retrospect, I still would have gone, but it was definitely a surprise to me. So don't allow bad weather to overshadow your visit or your opinion of a college. Don't lose your tour. As I mentioned earlier, if you wander away or if you decide it's time to leave, let your tour guide know, but also don't do your own little sort of side tour and lose them all, because they're 9 times out of 10, they're going to wait for you or look for you. Don't speak on your cell. You can take notes on your cell, but try not to text or speak on it, and keep your ringer off, again, because it's just rude for that to happen. So this is the real life campus tour, which hopefully will happen again this summer. Questions to ask your tour guide. What's their major? You want to get to know them. They're there. List their single favorite and least favorite details about the school. How many hours a week do they study? Are there new facilities or buildings being built on campus? If so, what are they for? Are they for research? If you're into research, that could be very exciting. If it's a new gym, maybe you're like, that's fun, but it's not going to be something that your education is going to revolve around. Is there a campus safety system in place? We talked about that in our last presentation. How safe is the campus? Is there campus transportation? Some schools are huge, or some schools are on the medium size, but offer transportation to the town beyond the school with school transportation. So something to talk to your tour guide about. Self-assessment, as I mentioned earlier. Do the students look happy or stressed? Is there a lot of grassy open place, or is the campus cramped and full of buildings? Does it feel like everything's coming in on you, or does it feel like you have a lot of great space to study and spread out if you were there? Check out the notices and posters on campus and in the dorms. See what's happening. Are there recitals? Are there presentations? Are there plays? Is there a theater? What else is happening on campus while you're there? I mean, it'd be great if you could attend something that was happening while you were there, but just in general, see how active and how vibrant the campus scene is. Are the dorms well cared for or run down? Do they have air conditioning? I can tell you, many of the older schools do not have air conditioning in the dorms because it's impossible to retrofit them. So something to look at. And if that's going to be critical to you, it's better that you know now than you wait and you move in and find that you have no air conditioning and you're miserable. Because I can tell you, in some locations, no AC can be a big deal. Maybe there's another dorm that has AC. So things to look at and ask about. Is the library full or empty? As I mentioned, maybe it's full of students because they're nearing exam week or they're nearing the end of the quarter and a lot of kids are in there studying. Is it full to overflowing, or is it just comfortably full? Is no one in the library? If so, maybe it's just after exams. Or maybe it's a reflection that the school's not as academic as you'd like. Does the library provide private study rooms where you can get together with groups for group projects and presentations? That's really important. And many libraries, sometimes dorms, will provide those as well. Does the campus store stock basic groceries and supplies? So imagine you're in your dorm, you're a freshman, you typically don't have a car, you want some Cheerios, or you want a fresh sandwich, or you want some lettuce to make a salad. Does the campus store have a little grocery area where you can go, like a little mini mart or a mini grocery store, and get some food without having to go off campus. That can be something that's really key and important, a nice little amenity to have. And is the campus clean and well-groomed? Really, really important. Look around you, look at the buildings, look at the trash cans. Are things overflowing, or are things well kept? Do things look clean, or do they look like they could use a little scrubbing? Sometimes urban campuses can get dirty just from the surroundings, but you want to make sure that they're not dirty, that maybe it's just something that's in passing and they're between cleaning. So look and see what your surroundings look like. If you feel like there's litter everywhere, that's not going to be a great thing. However, most campuses are going to be really clean and spotless. That's your ideal campus. So optional components of your college visit. Again, this is going in person. You can attend a class. You can typically eat in the dining hall. And attending a class, you frequently have to make arrangements in advance. Eat in the dining hall. As I mentioned earlier, attend a student performance or sporting event if it's happening while you're there, which is a great coincidence. You can schedule a formal or informational interview with admissions. An informational interview is something that's much more casual than a formal interview, and it's something that some schools offer to students when they're on campus. Again, making that in advance, you'd have to make those arrangements in advance. Also, meeting with the professor or the dean from your department of interest. That can be really a great thing to do while you're on campus. Something that I did when I was touring schools with my children, meeting with financial aid, talking to them and saying, okay, how generous are they with aid? Even though there's certain information published on the website, the more people you get to know if you're applying for financial aid, the more people you get to know face to face, the better. If you're a student or a family who has students with any learning differences, meet with whoever is responsible for that department and see what sort of accommodations are granted to students who come to the school. So you want to look and see what student support service is like. Is it big? Is it welcoming? Is it, very robust? Or is there a person at a desk who hands out notes? You really want to see if you have a student with learning differences, you want to make sure, or if you are a student with learning differences, you want to make sure that your needs are taken care of. So the campus tour follow-up. Once the tour is over, you can explore it on your own. You can stop in the campus store for a souvenir. I am looking up at a Harvard banner and a Syracuse banner. My nephew went to Syracuse, so I have a Syracuse banner here, and a Cornell sweatshirt. So take a copy of the school newspaper, great for follow-up research. Sit down in a quiet spot. And this is something even after a virtual campus tour, you want to take the time to write your thoughts out, because as I mentioned earlier, all of these things start to blend. If you go to 5 different schools in 4 days, they're going to become one massive school and they're going to blend in your mind. So the more specific notes you can take, the better, whether you're doing a virtual tour or an in-person tour. Another thing to do is, even if you're doing a virtual tour, do it with your family. Sit together and watch it together and then discuss it. Say, what did you think about it? How did you feel about that library? How did you feel about the dorms? Have a family discussion, because college is a family event. Going to college, you're going to college on your own, but your family is very, very involved in this process. And then you can drive or walk around the communities surrounding campus if you're there. See if there are little cafes, see if there are little grocery stores, see what sort of amenities there are right in the perimeter of campus that students can have access to on foot. So something to do as a follow-up to the campus tours. Scheduling college visits. So when do you want to do it? Winter, spring, and summer breaks. Again, this is based on non-COVID times when they're accepting tours. And again, look on that website that we listed, the NACAC website. They'll tell you what schools are touring students and what schools are not. Weekends for schools in your area, definitely take a quick trip. Just because a school is 15 miles from you doesn't mean that you've necessarily seen the campus. Maybe a school is an hour from you. You should absolutely drive and see the campus. Some families will wait until their student is accepted to schools to check the campuses out. And that's just a completely different philosophy. It doesn't work for everyone because some will use the campus visit as a process of eliminating schools from their list or a process of highlighting schools on their list. If possible, visit 2 schools in the same area if you've arranged a school trip, 2 schools in the same area per day. Allow time for traffic, parking, and walking to the admissions office, and try not to overschedule yourself. You want to find that balance between seeing enough but not too much. Prioritize your campus visits. So if you're in a town that has 20 schools, well, maybe you want to choose 6 and not know that you can't go to all 20. So you want to choose your top 6 or a cross section of 6. Have the school's address and admissions or tour office number, their phone number on hand. So if you're driving to the school and you get lost, I can tell you, I've done this. You can call admissions, they'll give you directions. They may hold a tour for you if you're going on a tour before the info session. It's best to call them and give them an update. And absolutely bring younger siblings and parents and guardians. When I toured schools with my daughter, I brought my younger son with us. Even though they ended up going to different schools, he was still exposed to a lot of schools that he would not have seen otherwise, and didn't then need to go and see again when he was looking at schools. So that is a lot about college research and campus visits and info sessions. And we are now open to your questions.
Thank you so much, Julia. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We have had a couple questions come in. I'm going to give a minute for some other questions to come in. If you'll move to the next slide, I'll just quickly touch on follow-up of our programs. So if you guys are joining us for the first time, this is part 3 in a 3-part series about college research and building a college list. So if you haven't already had a chance, I would go back and check out part 1 and part 2 of this series and kind of watch them all together. It'll be a little bit more comprehensive to watch all 3 of them in line if you haven't been joining us throughout. We do have college admissions counseling programs available. So if you're interested in working with a counselor like Julia, one-on-one, you have more detailed questions, definitely give us a ring or sign up for a free consultation on our website. We would love to work with you guys if that's something that you're interested in. And we would love to help you on your college admissions journey. Not going to spend too much time on that because I want to make sure we can get to any questions that come through. We had 2 come in during the presentation that we can start with. They're a little bit more specific to Princeton Review resources, so I'll go ahead and just answer them.
Okay.
The first one was, do we have information about liberal arts schools, media, filmmaking departments on our website? And yes, we do have some of that information. If you go check out the Princeton Review College Search Tool, you can sort by majors. We do have some media and film majors on there, so I would recommend that if you're interested in that area or whatever area you're interested in. Again, you can sort by a host of different majors. I would guess to say there's at least 100 different majors on there. Don't quote me on that because I don't know the exact number. There's a lot. And I did double check. We do have information on film and media majors on there as well. The second question was specific to our Best 365 book. Does it speak specifically about teaching styles? There is a section on each college within that book that talks about academics from the student's perspective. It may not necessarily talk about specific teaching styles, as that can vary from professor to professor on campus, and also on class size, whether you're working with a professor, whether you're working with a TA, but it does talk about the general feeling of academics on that campus. So hopefully you can get a better idea there. That is something that I would definitely recommend asking about in an information session or a campus tour, asking whoever is leading that, whether it's an admissions rep or a current student, about the teaching styles of the classes that they see on campus or that they're directly in on campus. So let's see, we had, let's see, hold on one second, reading this question. Do we have, so this question is about applying to colleges during COVID. We did not touch on that during this session. This was mostly about researching and visiting colleges during COVID, but we're happy to talk about it. There's not a ton of questions coming in right now, so we can definitely venture a little off topic. Do we have, I'll pass this over to you, Julia. Do we have any general advice about applying to colleges during COVID? What's your general advice kind of in this weird year that is 2020?
So my general advice is absolutely take advantage of the virtual info sessions and tours that schools offer during COVID. I think it is a great way for you to see the schools. In this case, it's probably the only way for you to see the schools and learn about the schools. So absolutely do that. And in your high school, make sure you're checking in with your college counselor or see if your school has a schedule posted of when colleges are doing presentations specific to your high school. That doesn't happen at every high school, but many high schools have relationships with the college admissions people, and they will do a school-specific presentation. Absolutely attend it. So again, we mentioned demonstrated interest. Even though it doesn't apply to all schools, you want to attend virtual info sessions whenever possible. So that, to me, in COVID, that's a way that you can really, really learn more about the school. And then, of course, using the school website as a great resource, and that's with or without COVID. The website's an excellent resource.
Did you have any recommendations for applying to colleges during COVID?
Recommendations for applying during COVID. Well, the difference in applying this year, which is clearly a year of COVID, is there is a question on the application about whether COVID has impacted your application or not. So that's something that I would look at and decide if your AP scores have been impacted, if your GPA, if your school has gone to all virtual learning and pass-fail, if that's impacted your GPA. You can explain to colleges how you've been impacted by COVID. So that, to me, is the main way that COVID would affect your college application. And Emily, I'm happy to hear any other insight that you have on that question.
Yeah, definitely. While we're waiting, hopefully, for some more questions to come in, I'll expand a little bit on that from my perspective as well. I think definitely the COVID-19 question is one big difference this year, and utilize it. It looks different for every student, but every student is being impacted by the pandemic across the board. So truly, if this has impacted you in some way, colleges want to know about it. That's why they're asking that question. So don't be scared to use it. Don't feel like you have to be in some specific type of predicament to answer that question. Like, this is your opportunity to answer how the pandemic has affected you as a student. Secondary to that, I think, it's just a different year. And there's a lot of unanswered questions. And unfortunately, we don't have all the answers either, because this is the first year for something like this to happen, at least that we have been alive and looking at college applications and helping students with them. So I think the key here is, remember and remind yourself, every student's in the same boat. Essentially, there are differences, obviously, but every student is facing these same type of obstacles to some degree. Testing is obviously going to be of much less value in this application cycle. That's not to say if you have taken a test that you shouldn't send your test scores, because if they are good and add to your profile, you should absolutely be sending those test scores. If you were one of the unlucky students who had test after test after test canceled, call it a loss. It's okay. If you are a senior and you are at the point in your cycle where you are still trying to take a test, let it go. It's okay. Unless there is a school that is on your list that has unfortunately not adopted a test optional plan for this cycle, it's okay not to have a test if you're at that point in the game and it's not there. Now, if you're an underclassman, if you're a junior, do not write off tests yet, because you don't know what the colleges are going to be asking for or what the situation is going to look like 12 months from now. So don't automatically assume that you will be in the same boat as your seniors, as your fellow seniors, and not be able and can, wiggle your way out of a standardized test. So kind of keep your eye on the movement there. Definitely, I would recommend, if you're a junior and you're planning on taking tests this spring, still plan on that. As those come and go and maybe happen or get canceled, you can adjust your plan from there. Other than that, the application cycle is going to look fairly normal. You're still going to be submitting the same materials to schools. They're still going to be focusing mostly on your grades. That's always been the case, even before the pandemic. So grades are number one. Your high school transcript always is number one. again, the biggest thing is probably going to be testing. That's typically, one of the next couple items on the list that colleges are looking for. I would say essays are going to stand out a lot this year because there's got to be ways to fill in those gaps with no testing. And activities are definitely going to look different this year. So know again that most students were not in school for the spring semester. A lot of students have had weird schedules this fall semester as well. So if you have had a significant drop in your activities, that's understandable. It's something that you should write about in the COVID response question on the Common App. But I would encourage you as a senior to continue to try to find ways to engage. There are students that are still finding ways to engage. So don't automatically assume that just because school was canceled that it's okay for you to completely disengage from everything. Or if there's a reason for that that's more personal, then maybe you need to write about that in that COVID response question. Like if you're taking care of younger siblings or something like that, due to parents needing to be at work and you're monitoring schooling and helping cook at home and things like that to pick up some slack, that's something you should write about in that COVID-19 response question.
Right. I think your comment on virtual activities is key. That's something that many students have just written off activities and said, our school's not doing any activities, so I can't do anything. I think colleges will look this year for students who have maybe gone a step beyond and been creative and come up with some virtual activities to do, whether it's making cards and sending them to first responders and retirement homes, whether it's tutoring students online virtually. The students who are going to stand out will be those who have somehow been able to transcend and create activities, be creative, and think outside the box. Of course, not everyone can do that, but it's just something. Don't just write activities off this year. Try and think outside the box and come up with some virtual ideas.
Agreed. Appreciate your feedback on that, Julia.
Sure.
We have not had any more questions come in, so I don't know if you guys have any last minute questions, go ahead and submit them now so we can get them answered. Otherwise, we will go ahead and head out for the evening and let everybody enjoy the rest of their afternoon/evening. So again, if you haven't already joined us for the previous sessions or watched them, we highly recommend starting with part 1, moving into part 2. All of the sessions are connected together. The whole focus of this series is developing your college list and college research. So hopefully for those of you that are younger underclassmen, this can kind of help you get a leg up and start to kind of research schools and understand resources that are available to you, and hopefully find some schools that are a little bit outside of the normal schools you hear about, those 20 or 50 schools that continually get notoriety. We'd love for you to look a little bit past those and find some other great options. And again, we just want to thank you guys so much for attending. So looks like we're good on questions. And Julia, thank you for presenting.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for spending your afternoon with us. And check out part one and part 2, as Emily said, and they're all online. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon.